Hi, good morning to my streaming audience. Geez, this is just all right. This has got to be this. Good morning. For those of you tuning in now on the stream, there is no broadcast at K Talk. Just as usual. Just the usual thing. I contact and get involved with them through the phone, and as usual, somebody's left something turned off um, at the station. You know what? I think there's probably a class at the School of Business at University of Utah that specializes in how not to do a business. So, oh, brother, is this worth it? Is this absolutely worth it? I don't know. But I am not broadcasting, and I should be. Everything is turned on here at my phone. Those of you who continue to tune in on the stream, I'm sorry. This is embarrassing. This is embarrassing beyond words. I want to try to convert most of the K-Talk audience over to the stream because the sound is good. There's a picture. I can show things that are important to be seen. And it's important that this is able to come through. So until I hear from Paul, I can't, unfortunately, I cannot do a K-Talk broadcast. So I will just go ahead and talk with you. I'll just leave it like that. Because I have something that I wanted to share with you anyway. So I hope you will indulge me. There it goes. Now. There we go. Maybe that'll do it. Nope. That's not doing it either. There's nothing coming through on the recording. For Pete's sake. I am so embarrassed. I really am sorry about this. Nothing. If you'll be patient with me, I will do what I can here to. All right, Paul's taken over control of the radio station. It's another Monday. If you were, I know. This has got to be. All right, let's try this and see if this is going to work. Hold on a second here. No, I can't get to the recording, so I don't know if I'm transmitting or not. I have no idea. But for those of you on the stream, I appreciate that you're here. And Believe it or not, I really do have a program for you. Oh, gosh. Nah, I don't know whether I'm broadcasting or not because I can't bring up the recording. The recording is the only way I can tell whether or not I'm doing anything. I cannot contact the radio station. Well, here we go again. All right. Let's see if there's anything happening here yet. No, I don't know. I don't know, everybody. I am embarrassed. I'm sorry. But I cannot hook up to the office computer. So I think I will just do a show for the stream today instead of the K-Talk audience. Because I have no idea if I'm broadcasting or not. Thanks, Ryan. Except, Ryan, if you're just trying to listen to the broadcast and not on the computer, you can't tell what I'm doing. So I will just go ahead and, oh, I'm on? I don't see any evidence of that. Well, I'll take your word for it because I have no control of the station. Every time I try to connect, it throws me out. And I'm fuzzy. I'm fuzzy. I'm surprised I'm even there. Yeah. I'll make you a deal. If we can't get this thing solved this week, I think I will go straight stream. I think that's what I got to do. Because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to do this. And I don't know if something's being left the night. Here I am belly aching, and I don't want to belly ache. I really don't. There's plenty of things to belly ache, like what's coming out of the White House. There's plenty of other things to belly ache about. Yep, I believe you, Paul. Paul, thanks for trying to intervene, to do what you can. You said that I'm broadcasting. I'll take your word for it. I will have no control of commercials. I have no control of the news at the top of the hour. I can't record. So I'll just plow into this, but there will be a good recording on the stream, and you can catch that later on if you, no, Paul, I'm not recording because I can't. I can't seem to, well, let me try again from another access. No, it throws me out. Every time I try to connect to a remote device, Paul, it throws me out. I've never seen it like this before. So I don't know, sir. I'm not recording. I have no evidence here on my computer that I'm even connected to K-Talk Radio. Yeah, well, all right. So I was just reading recently in Chuck Baldwin's article, Hail Caesar, we who are about to die salute you. I love it. It's really hard to fathom the utter ignorance of the Constitution and the utter bankruptcy, the depth of moral depravity that you've seen over the last 4 years, but not just the 4 years. I'm not just a lot of static. Man, I don't know what to tell you. I really don't. I am doing what I can possibly do here. Just, are you recording? But we understand. Just a lot of static. But we understand. Well, Paul, you have to tell me if you can hear what I'm saying right now at 7:15. If you can hear me, I will keep the phone connected and limp along here because I got some. This is important. We are at an important. I was going to say improbable, important in one word, turn of events right now. And I titled today's program on stream as is Trump crazy like a fox? I mean, what is he really up to with some of these most outrageous things that he's been saying and doing recently? And you've been following it every bit as much as I have, I'm sure. And it's just absolutely stupefying what's taking place here, especially wanting to violate the Geneva Conventions. We didn't put Trump in office to have him violate the Geneva Convention by forcibly removing populations from their homeland. And if anybody is still mistaken as to whose homeland that is, I'm sorry. But the Palestinians are in the Palestinian homeland. And the other side of the fence would like you to believe that they're the intruder. So when you look at the extreme callousness to the heritage, the hearts of the people who have lived there for generations and generations and generations, that you saw during Joe Biden's administration, when Joe Biden, of course, was fostering, taking genocide to a whole new level. And then what you see ongoing now with the administration of Donald Trump. The very foreign head of state that Trump invited, the very first person, the very first foreign dignitary, individual that is in charge of another country that was invited to the White House after the inauguration, of course, was Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu. And Netanyahu is, and I'm quoting Chuck Baldwin here, is without doubt the world's most notorious war criminal and mass murderer, bar none. Instead of putting him in a limousine and driving him to the White House, he should have been met by law enforcement personnel, put in shackles, and immediately put on a plane to The Hague to stand trial for international war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Now, what I was hoping for was what I thought took place in Mar-a-Lago a year ago, well, almost a year ago, last summer, when Netanyahu showed up at Mar-a-Lago. And just about the time Adelson was giving Trump $100 million, and AIPAC was coming out and supporting Trump, and I thought Trump was just doing a business deal that he would somehow renege on once he got into office. But this announcement that Trump made during the sit-down with Netanyahu is just beyond belief. I'm quoting from Zero Hedge right now, and I'm stumbling, because I wanted to be able to do a simulcast with K-Talk Radio. I don't even know if I'm coming across at K-Talk right now or not. People who usually let me know one way or the other, I'm not hearing from. So I assume that I'm coming across, but I am trying to ride two horses, and it's very difficult to ride two horses at the same time. And my audience at the stream is growing. Thank you. Thank you for being here on the stream. But I'm coming across sounding very foolish, I think, or acting foolish, trying to ride two horses. So I'm going to quote from Zero Hedge. I thought this was really good because they took the words right out of my mouth. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was all smiles as he visited the White House and met with President Trump in the Oval Office Tuesday afternoon, especially given Trump said many things in terms of the future of Gaza that the Israeli leader would welcome. Trump, in an exchange with reporters while sitting next to Bibi, continued pressing the idea that Palestinians should be relocated out of Gaza. There's hardly a building, quote, there's hardly a building standing. Yeah, of course. Wait a second. Let me get the quote out of my mouth before I break into laughter. There's hardly a building standing, and the ones that are going to collapse, and you can't live in Gaza right now. I think they need another location. Jeez. Still quoting from Zero Hedge. Trump stoked further controversy by claiming Palestinians would love to leave Gaza. Comments which have already been condemned by many pundits as tantamount to an ethnic cleansing campaign. Arab leaders, too, have blasted any plan which would see a mass exodus or removal of Palestinians to neighboring countries. Who would want to go back? Trump posited during the sit-down with Netanyahu. Well, Mr. Trump, I suggest you take a look at the videos of the tens of thousands of Palestinians marching north into the, once the IDF pulled out that was separating northern and southern, and I'll get back to the quote here in a minute, northern and southern Gaza, they were able to come out of the southern part, back up towards the northern part, singing and dancing as they go. I mean, what does that tell you? They were singing and dancing in the street in Gaza, moving north. And he says, who would want to go back? Well, take a look at the video. So, yes, the place has been leveled, but as the ceasefire, and I'm quoting from Zero Hedge, has held, there's been evidence of a mass return of tens of thousands of Palestinians to their largely destroyed communities in the northern Gaza Strip. Trump said, it would be my hope that we could do something really nice where they would not want to return. It doesn't have to be one area, he says, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing like a beautiful town, like some place where they can live and not die. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all the dangerous, unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. Level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out. Create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. You just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Radio's broadcasting, but it's really scratchy, hard to hear me. I'm sorry, everybody. Rattle, distorted, volume excessively low, almost indistinguishable. Sorry for bad news, not good. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to both are incredibly scratchy, sounding perhaps Well, yes, Ralph, the problem does have to be solved in the future. But we love your sense and sensibility on these issues. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I don't know what else to tell you. But I don't know why I don't tune in internet. Oh, okay, the radio and the internet, not the, I assume that the stream is working here, my stream, at YouTube and X. And you can follow these on your smartphones. You can go to youtube.com/@Global Affairs Unfiltered. Or you can go to x.com/@Global Affairs UF. And I presume that that this program's coming through much clearer in that regard. Yes, streaming is great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so let me get back to what I'm talking about here. So I said, I titled this program on on the stream as, is Trump crazy like a fox? I mean, what in the world is he up to? Yeah, he owes a lot of money to the pro-Israeli crowd out there, especially when you get $100 million from Miriam Adelson, who gets to pick his cabinet. And speaking of that, I've got to remember where the information. I've got to go search for the information. Darn it! There are three senators, and it looks like Curtis is still dragging his feet, the new senator from Utah, on approving these three individuals that the deep state absolutely does not want in office. And I'll get to that a little bit later in the program. But you can go online, just search John Curtis, the Utah senator. His page will come up. There's a number to contact his staff, emails. He has got to be persuaded. I honestly believe, whoops, I didn't mean to bang my microphone. I honestly believe in my heart of hearts, if these three do not get into those offices and Tulsi Gabbard can start giving truthful intelligence to the president, because he's getting some really bad advice, there's no hope for ever getting our republic back. I honestly believe that. I'll continue doing what I can to preserve whatever remains of the republic through radio broadcasting. But if these people do not get in there, your health care will continue to be controlled by Big Pharma. The deep state that's in the Justice Department will continue to prosecute innocent Americans and surveil innocent Americans. And the intelligence gathering network that works primarily for the military-industrial complex will continue to give the advice that they've been giving to Biden and Obama and Trump in his first administration. They'll continue to give the same bad intelligence advice to the president now. Now, if I know that, I know you know that. And if we know that, there's a lot of people who know that. This is no mystery. And when Eisenhower gave us the warning in 1960, how long ago was that? That's 65 years ago? 65 years ago gave us that warning. He could easily have warned us of the media crap that was going on. He could have warned us of the pharmaceutical industrial complex that was just getting started. That once they received congressional release from any liability for vaccine damage, then the pharmaceutical industry just took off like crazy. You can't play pharmaceutical commercials in European television. I'm getting off track. I want to get back to President Trump here. I'll try to get back to that because I want to give you an update on the bird flu. Jeez. Another comedy of errors, not errors, another comedy of distraction, distortion, and propaganda. All right, this is what Al Jazeera had to say about what Trump said. United States President Donald Trump has said the U.S. will take over and own Gaza after resettling Palestinians elsewhere under an extraordinary redevelopment plan that he claimed could turn the enclave into the Riviera of the Middle East. I thought that's what Beirut was. Beirut, a number of decades ago, was the Riviera, was the Paris of the Middle East. Anyway, quoting Trump, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it. Trump said at the White House after talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In his announcement, Trump suggested the U.S. would take a long-term ownership position over the enclave. Remember what one of the there's more to the quote here. I just want to interject what one of the press people who were present at this, when the president, the question and answer with the press afterwards, and one of the questions, by what authority? what is your authority to do something like this? And they kind of got pushed aside. Well, I don't think I want to say yet. Okay, quote. He said, Trump says this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land. Did you ask the Palestinians when you say everybody? And developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent. Asked if U.S. soldiers could be sent to Gaza to maintain security, Trump said it was a possibility. As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it is necessary, we will do that. There you go. U.S. soldiers, probably Marines. They're already in Syria. Just put them in a helicopter and bounce them down to Gaza. Now, he is, what he's saying, I mean, he's saying it out loud. So I'm kind of, as I said, I've talked about Miriam Adelson and that this is a deal for the $100 million that the Israeli government, Mossad, and Adelson put into Trump's campaign. So I guess you're going to see a Trump International Golf Course there, and you're going to see a Trump Tower there. And but the Zionists who put Biden into office to do their dirty work of helping Israel commit genocide against the Gazan people and completely destroying the infrastructure, just making, well, the idea of moving the Gazan Palestinians south in Gaza was to continue leveling the land. The deaths now of Palestinians is somewhere around, the published number, around 60,000. That does not account for all of those that were flattened between the concrete floors of these buildings when they were hit with our bombs. And so, by what constitutional, and one other quote here, I thought this was good. Now the Zionists have put Trump in office to do the work of moving the remaining Palestinians to U.S. puppet countries, Jordan and Egypt. Why are they U.S. puppet countries? Because of the amount of money that we give them. We give millions to Jordan, we give millions to Egypt. And so the Trump card, allegedly that Trump would use in getting these countries to open up their doors, which they have absolutely denied they're going to do, would come from threatening to cut off the money. It's amazing how quickly that can get people's attention. So the quote goes on, in order to allow the U.S. and Israel to develop the beachfront property of Gaza on the Mediterranean Sea, seize the oil, the natural gas, and the minerals that exist there, and also help Israel seize the land in the West Bank. As United States Marine Corps General Smedley Butler said, war is a racket. So the question is, this is your trivia question of the morning. By what constitutional, lawful, moral, ethical authority does Trump declare to the world that he's going to take over, subjugate, and own the people of a land of foreign territory? Well, there is no such authority. That's why they brushed over that question when the reporter asked in the news conference, who are you? This is raw imperialism. This is raw empire. And this is a crime of using power for profit. It reeks of rot and corruption. And so the title of this broadcast, Is He Crazy Like a Fox? is he doing something knowing that that's not going to happen? 1.5 to 2 million people are not just going to turn their course around. Well, all they got to do is head east, because Jordan's right there on the eastern border, or turn back around and start marching back south, probably not dancing and singing this time, to the Egyptian border or down into the Sinai. I'm hardly without words. I don't. If does Trump, in my prayer of prayers, have a card up his sleeve, and that he's setting up Netanyahu? Because when you see the videos of the Palestinians returning to their bombed out homes and their flattened, rotten corpses of their dead family members smashed and pancaked in these buildings, dancing and singing while they move northward, passing limited little bottles of water around to one another. The only way you're going to get them to turn around and move back south towards the Sinai, or half of them go straight east towards Jordan, is you're going to have to shoot them. You're going to have to bomb them. You're going to have to, the carrot on a stick thing, where you put food and water out in front of them so they can go after the food and water in the direction that you're trying to displace them. And Trump says essentially said he's prepared to do that. Now, I'm going to quote from Chuck Baldwin here. This is really good, the way he says this. Palestine is not the ancestral home of Ashkenazi Jews like Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich. Their ancestral homeland is Eastern Europe, Ukraine to be specific, because apparently that's where Netanyahu comes from, is Poland, with Ukrainian roots. The Palestinians can trace their ancestry in Palestine for over 100 or over 1,000 years. Israeli sycophant, ex-preacher politician, now ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee is dead wrong when he absurdly spouts that Israel's homeland goes back 3,500 years. No, it doesn't. The Assyrians destroyed Israel in 722 BC. The Babylonians destroyed Judah in 587 BC. The Romans destroyed the Jewish remnant in 70 AD, and God has not given the land of Palestine to the Jews in perpetuity. Remember when they, is it in Exodus? I'm getting a little blocker, or Numbers, where God makes the promise that this is their land if, there's a very big if, they take care of one another. Now, I am probably butchering it, but that's the idea. If they take care of one another. So, if indeed, this is just, doesn't this remind you of Rome? The Caesars of Rome? They had to go get the land from the Vandals and the Goths and the Egyptians and the Greeks in order to feed the empire. And the two things principally that brought the Roman Empire to an end, it spread itself too thin, and the internal rot set themselves up for dictators, starting with Julius. And then his nephew Augustus gets in there, and Augustus had some pretty good qualities about him. I mean, he was there for 50 years or something like that, trying to reorganize the empire to a situation where it could re-strengthen itself, but only under dictatorial control. And then, of course, that was the beginning of the Caesars for another 400 years. Well, at the same time that Trump is committing ethnic cleansing in Palestine to build his Riviera of the Middle East, will own it and will make it a place where the people of the world will want to come and visit. Not Palestinians, mind you, the people of the world. He also wants to annex Canada and making it the 51st state. He wants to take over Greenland and is dead set on getting the canal back. And it simply appears to, oh, thank you, Ralph. It's in Chronicles. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek wicked ways, then I will hear them. Oh, no, this is not the quote I'm looking for. This one, I think this applies to us as much as it applies to anybody else. If you repent and call upon God, he will heal the land and forgive the sins. No, it's another quote that I'm looking for. You know, if the United States were to pull in Canada, what kind of senators would they represent? Now, I know that's fantastic because that's not going to happen. Canada is not going to become the 51st state. Alberta might like it, but I don't think the rest of them would. And the United States would have an awful lot to gain by Canada becoming the 51st state simply because of the oil that's in Alberta. But what kind of senators do you think you would get? What kind of House of Representative members do you think you would get from Canada? Right-wing conservatives? No, the Republicans would completely lose. They would never have a majority again in either chamber of the government. You know, does anybody in the grand old party have the acumen to tell President Trump how crazy these ideas are? So, if you have children in the service, especially the Army, because that's the first group the President talked about, Marines probably to follow, might be ordered to fight and die invading Gaza to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people and the opposition forces who will fight and die resisting such tyranny, then that's why Baldwin titled his paper, Hail Caesar, we who are about to die salute you. Well, Israel is already planning. I have more on this here about a quarter to the hour. And again, if you're tuning in on the radio, I'm sorry for the transmission. There's always problems Monday morning. I don't know what happens at the radio station Sunday night, but there's always problems Sunday morning or Monday morning. And Paul does the best he can to get some kind of a hookup. I'm trying to move more and more towards the stream and less on air broadcast at K-Talk. And these are the moments that make that feasible to me. It makes sense anyway. But the Israelis are already planning for the removal of the Palestinians from Gaza. The Israeli Defense Minister, Katz, said that he has instructed the army to prepare plans for large numbers of Palestinians. He didn't say what that large number was. Large numbers of Palestinians to leave the Gaza Strip in line with and following in behind President Trump's proposal for this war-ravaged territory to be changed. If you have seen the destruction there, and I'm sure you have by now, how many lifetimes will it take to clean that out? I mean, it looks worse than Dresden. It looks worse than Hamburg after the bombings. I was just having this image in my mind where these big 5-yard bucket front end loaders will be loading up stuff to the dump trucks. Where's the dump trucks going to take this stuff? How far do they have to drive? You know, I've never been there. I've been to Egypt. but I have never been to Israel. I never really wanted to. I think I would like to have visited Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem, but I don't know that, I don't have a particular interest in going there now, but when I look at the images, and now the defense minister, this was just 2 days ago, is telling the IDF, get ready to forcibly move the Palestinians out of Palestine. What have they been doing for the last year and a half? They got pushed out by Hamas. Hamas isn't going to sit there and say, oh my gosh, President Trump is so right. We're not only going to lay down our weapons, we're going to turn them towards our own people and help the extrication from Gaza, of our own people. Hamas won the war in Gaza. That's why the IDF pulled out. It wasn't because they needed more military strength as they invaded Syria and into Lebanon. They got kicked out. What do you think Hamas is doing? Just sitting back, turning in their weapons. Oh, President Trump says for us to go, we better go. No, and who are they going to be pointing their guns at? Anybody that gets in the way that could harm the Palestinian people. And before too long, the Palestinian people, instead of singing and dancing their way back to their crushed, smashed homes, will be chanting, hell no, we won't go, as we heard in the 70s regarding the Vietnam War. And so, was it, I think it was Saturday, Trump said on the 6th, no, I guess it had been maybe Friday, 8, 9, anyway, he said that his plan, quote, will include options for exit at land crossings as well as special arrangements for exit by sea and air. How do you move 1.5 or more million people who don't want to go? By Uber? And then the U.S. officials, walking back a little bit about what Trump had to say, well, it's only temporary. But Palestinians, of course, fear that Israel will never let them back. Of course they'll never let them back. I mean, it's going to be another Nakba. So Katz said Gaza's residents should be allowed the freedom to exit and emigrate, as is the practice anywhere around the world. Rehabilitation plans in a demilitarized Gaza that poses no threat to the post-Hamas era, which will take many years. Then Katz suggested Spain, Ireland, Norway, because all three of those countries have recognized the state of Palestine. Now just picture in your mind Palestinian refugees who do not want to go, loaded in military airplanes and flown to Norway. You see how absolutely insane this is. And there's other countries besides Spain, Ireland, and Norway that have made false accusations against Israel's genocide that should take Palestinian refugees too. And Katz also mentioned Canada. He says Canada has an organized immigration program, but they previously voiced have voiced a willingness to accept Gazan refugees. Spain's already rejected Katz's statement. As I've said before, when I was in Spain at the end of September last year for my son's wedding, I noticed something very interesting in Valencia. Valencia looked like it was full of Valencians. Now, at the risk of sounding racist, and I don't consider myself to be racist, I have been to France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland. I'm leaving something out. Scotland, UK, of course, where they don't look exclusively like those countries may have looked 100 years ago, in the sense that there are an awful lot of people of color because of their immigration policies. And I didn't see that in Spain, and I remarked that to my son when I was there, and he said, "Dad, Spain has very strict immigration policies, unlike these other countries." So Spain's already rejected the idea of Spain being a new home for the Gazan refugees. Spain said this, the Spanish Foreign Minister Albares said, "Gazans' land is Gaza, and Gaza must be part of the future Palestinian state." So the Trump administration officials are struggling, even as I heard the news this morning, in their attempt to clarify what President Trump's takeover plan really is, and there's all kinds of mixed stories that are coming out on that subject. Both the Secretary of State Rubio and Press Secretary Leavitt are contradicting some of Trump's claims over the course of last week, saying that the relocation of the Gazans would only be temporary. Now, when I think of something like that, I think of some poor, unfortunate family, or maybe an apartment building, because every now and then, every few years, there's an apartment building downtown in Salt Lake that catches fire. And usually the people are out on the street before anybody is killed. And the building burns either down or to the point where it has to be demolished. And these people are temporarily relocated to Red Cross shelter areas, to some places the city sets up. Eventually, 100, 200 at the most people have to be relocated somewhere, clothed, fed, until they can find alternate housing, which they usually do. But they don't come back because what got burned down ends up becoming a new bank or office building. Now, I know that's a little bit different, but how long would it take to relocate 1.5 million people? Even if you had buses going across West Bank into Jordan, or if you had buses going across down by the canal into Egypt, or military planes like you saw the last one escaping from Afghanistan on that fateful day a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, that can haul, 200 or 300 people. How many flights, how much would that cost to move 1.5 million with a return ticket? No, don't disparage, don't cry, don't weep for me, Argentina. Here's your return ticket. Now, it's going to take us 2 generations to rebuild the smashed, destroyed homes that you have in Gaza to lavish towers and golf courses and spas and swimming pools. But here's your return ticket. Just hold on to it. Don't lose it. And we'll air freight you back into you. I know. I'm beleaguering a point. I'm just trying to point out how absolutely insane that is. Mr. President, in my prayers this morning, I was praying that you're doing this with a tongue-in-cheek, setting up Netanyahu, because you can't seriously believe this is just another real estate deal. So Rubio said, in the interim, obviously, people are going to have to live somewhere while you're rebuilding it. It's akin to a natural disaster. And Rubio said that with a straight face. It's just like another natural disaster. And, we got FEMA. We'll have an international form of FEMA. He didn't say that. I'm saying that. And then Press Secretary Leavitt said, quote, "The president has made it clear that they need to be temporarily relocated out of Gaza." So Trump shook things up even more on the 6th when he posted on Social Truth an updated message that evinced no concept of temporary relocation. He said this: "The Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. The Palestinians people, like Chuck Schumer, the Palestinians and people like Chuck Schumer would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region." He said that. He said they will be resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. Where are there new and modern homes in the region? You're not going to find them in Jordan. You're not going to find them in the northeast area of, or all of the Nile. The only place they can go in Egypt is what is irrigated by the Nile. There are some in Doha. There's some in Riyadh. Yemen is a mess. But there are some oasis places in Saudi and Arab Emirates. And you think they're going to stand there with open arms? Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free? So back to President Trump's Truth Social post. "Relocated to far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. They would actually have a chance to be happy, safe, and free. The U.S., working with great development teams from all over the world, would slowly and carefully begin the construction of what could become one of the greatest, most spectacular developments of its kind on the earth. No soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. Stability for the region would reign." Maybe I'm beleaguering this. I just can't let this go, because if I'm wrong, I need somebody to tell me I'm wrong here with some convincing evidence that the newly elected president isn't insane. It comes down to this. Either he knows darn well what he's doing and he's setting Netanyahu up, and I can see how he would be doing that. Or number two, he's getting some really bad intelligence. And this is why the intelligence community wants to make sure that Gabbard does not get in there. Because in the daily briefings with the president, she will be clear, shaking him to get him to understand what's really going on, because she does. So in other comments on this proposal, Rubio said that Trump had offered, quote, "the willingness of the United States to become responsible for the reconstruction of that area. It was not meant as a hostile move. It was meant as, I think, a generous move. So it'll have to be worked out among multiple partner nations." I haven't gotten to what the other nations had to say about this yet, but it's coming. Otherwise, Defense Secretary Hegseth, now I notice it's 8 o'clock. I don't know what may or may not be playing simultaneously at K-Talk. I don't know if I'm double broadcasting, but for those of you who are here on the stream, welcome. I'm glad you're here with me this morning. I'm going to just continue talking as though you're my only audience. Again, if somehow you can hear me at K-Talk, you can hear this unadulterated broadcast at YouTube and X. At YouTube, you'd go to youtube.com/@globalaffairs unfiltered. And on X, you would go to x.com/@globalaffairsuf. So Hegseth said this: I think we are very long, on whether or not U.S. troops would be deployed to Gaza. And of course, he's the man to ask that question of. He said, I think we are a very long way from that, and that such a decision would first require robust discussions before anything went forward. And then Press Secretary Leavitt backpedaled a little bit with the idea of boots on the ground. She said, the president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He's also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. So he says, after the war is over, and Hamas is not ready to say the war is over, keep that in mind. The president said, after the war is over, we will own, Israel will give us the Gaza and we will own it. And we're going to rebuild it, but we're not going to pay for it. The countries in that region will pay for its reconstruction. Nothing's coming out of my mouth because you can't make this up. So Leavitt later said, again, it's a demolition site right now. It's not a livable place for any human being, and I think it's actually quite evil to suggest that people should live in such dire conditions. These people are crazy. They're absolutely crazy. Not one admission that those flattened buildings happened because of us. Not even a hint that these dispossessed people forced to the south to avoid their tents being bombed with 1,000-pound bombs and 2,000-pound bombs were our bombs under the previous administration. It's like the current administration is picking up right where the last administration left off. Bomb them. If they're not going to move, bomb them. Now, you know my appreciation for Ray McGovern, Colonel Wilkerson. They are members of VIPs. There's several members of VIPs, Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. And former CIA officials, Ray McGovern, who is a regular on the Napolitano podcast, and Graham Fuller, and a former U.S. Army colonel who was chief of staff for Powell, Wilkerson, Larry Wilkerson, all of whom have been speakers, interestingly enough, in the recent weeks on Schiller Institute. They had they joined forces on Dialogue Works. It's another podcast I like by Nima Al-Rashid, and a very interesting fellow. If you know what I'm talking about, he just kind of sits there and asks poignant questions. His programs, his broadcasts are longer than Napolitano's, so these guys can get more information out in the 30 minutes that Napolitano has them on. And so they were here just this last weekend talking about the plan announced by Trump and Netanyahu to drive the Palestinians out of Gaza, have the U.S. take it over and build it into a Riviera. All three of them expressed disgust that I'm trying to do politely, but they were openly calling it, comparing it to Hitler's anti-human genocidal policies, and warning that the populations of the world have to stand up and stop this from going any further or go down in history as the most evil empire in history. McGovern said this, quote, "We must stand up against this or be like the Germans in 1933 who caved in to Hitler. This could happen in our country." I know how this sounds, but I can't sit still and keep my mouth shut when I see these things going on. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe genocide's the best thing over there for these people. But I don't think I'm wrong. Now, I've been doing talk radio since 1995. That's, what, 30 years? 30 years next month. That doesn't make me any better or smarter than you. And I've tried on my show and shows and podcasts and now on the stream to put some possibilities out there to understand the madness and the craziness of what's going on. And the idea that the neighboring countries who happen to be Islamic and Arabic, like the Palestinians, are not going to sit still for this much longer. Now, the trump card that the current administration has, as I said at the beginning of the show, over Jordan and Egypt, are the billions of dollars we give them every year that they couldn't, Sisi could not maintain his dictatorial control of Egypt without it, and King Abdullah would have a nightmare on his hands. 60% of his population is Palestinian. So none of the Arab countries are going to accept this. And if the U.S. forces them to take the Palestinians driven out of the country or cuts off their funding, those governments will collapse. Al-Sisi's government will collapse, and so will King Abdullah's. And that is so extreme, I guess there's a possibility that that, in the end, could bring these nations together to do something. But these are intelligent professionals, CIA operatives, analysts. Now, there's a difference between a CIA operative in the field somewhere and an analyst in Langley or somewhere else who has 100 CIA agents sending them information every day, and the analyst puts this together to have a more concrete, wider vision of what is actually taking place, that individual agents might miss the whole picture. That's who these guys are. They're ex-CIA analysts. They know the history of this area. They know the history of the Ukraine. They know Putin's history. And when they say Putin isn't bluffing, well, let me talk about that for a second. I actually wondered when I was waking up this morning about 4:15, 4:20. Am I going to have anything really important to talk about today? And then I got to thinking, you know, it's impossible for us, it's impossible for me as an American citizen, with my own business, taking care of my patients, providing a service, making enough money to pay for my apartment and food and feed my cat, drive my car, without fear of somebody coming in and saying, all right, game's over, pack up, we're going to move you down to Chihuahua, Mexico. And if you don't go, you're going to wish you had. That's impossible. I mean, you can't even imagine something like that. The only way something like that could happen is what's happened in Asheville, North Carolina, because of natural disasters that forced you out. But to just begin a march, I don't know. So Keith Kellogg, who is President Trump's special envoy, interesting, not ambassador, special envoy to the Ukraine, we're just waiting maybe this week, the long-awaited plan to end Russia's so-called war on the Ukraine. During the Munich Security Conference in Germany, well, obviously in Germany. I can't remember if it's I think it's this week. Anyway, I get this from Bloomberg. People familiar with the matter, elements of the plan reportedly include potentially freezing the conflict, leaving territory occupied by Russian forces in limbo, while providing Ukraine with security guarantees to ensure that Moscow can't attack again. Kellogg will reportedly be traveling to Kyiv the following week. Kellogg told Newsmax that he'll be having discussions with European leaders on his trip to Munich and then report back to the president. However, Trump will be the one unveiling the plan publicly. Again, insanity. Any kind of an offer like that will be dead on arrival in the Kremlin. Are we the only people who see this that you know of? Now, the people see this all over the place. I mean, this isn't something that we happen to stumble upon or discover ourselves. There are people all over the world are seeing this. When I say us, you and me, as opposed to your friends and your associates. Let me ask you this. I don't think this is going to happen, but let me ask you this. If some of your family members or friends or coworkers or church members or whatever were asked if they were to fly a flag in front of their house next to the American flag, what country do you think they would pick? Yeah. Yeah. I think that too. Now, it's likely no coincidence that the UK Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, was in Kyiv this last week pushing this 100-year partnership that Keir Starmer was talking to Zelensky about. He said this: "Our support for Ukraine remains unbreakable. We are determined to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position, both in its fight against Russia and beyond, with our long-term relationship cemented by the 100-year partnership." They obviously are not aware of the fact that the Ukrainian war is over with. There are mass desertions. I have some numbers somewhere. Where is it? Right here. Oh, here it is. This is the latest. These are hard numbers from Ukrainian sources. This is not from Russian sources. Ukrainian sources of the dead. And headlined, "Russia and Ukraine exchanged bodies of soldiers. 49 Russians for 757 Ukrainians. Ukraine has received the bodies of 757 dead soldiers, the Ukrainian Coordination Headquarters for Prisoners of War reports. 451 bodies from Donetsk and Zaporizhia, 137, Bakhmut 71, from the morgues in Russia 34, from Luhansk 13. On December 20th, an exchange of 42 Russian fighters for 508 Ukrainian ones took place. What it breaks down to is that Russia had received the bodies of 49 soldiers, and in return they gave up the remains of 757 Ukrainian troops. That breaks down to 1 Russian for 15 Ukrainians. Does Kellogg know that? Does Trump know that? The New York Times, I mean, the data tells you everything you need to know about the true extent of Ukrainian losses and exposes the lies that are being put forward by the New York Times. However, the Times does make one very damning admission. Quote, "Western intelligence agencies have been reluctant to disclose their internal calculations of Ukrainian casualties for fear of undermining an ally. American officials have previously said that Kyiv withholds this information from even the closest of allies. So the CIA, the DIA, are not reporting the true Ukrainian losses because of politics." And so, turning to the prospect of negotiations, Putin spoke very clearly and pointedly this last weekend what to expect and blamed Trump's actions in his first term, which ended up creating more tension for Russia. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention because they're just as insane about what's going on in the Ukraine as they are what is going on in Gaza. All right, now, what are the American responses? What are some of the American responses? Because America, I mean, I'm not the only one, you're not the only ones who have a problem with the idea of uprooting 1.5 million people, temporarily, mind you, with their return ticket. They'll have to wait a couple of decades for it to be any good, but I don't know how fast you can put in a golf course. But President Trump's his proposal to vacate Gaza of Palestinians, eradicate the Palestinians, has drawn some very serious responses from American politicians, government people, across the entire spectrum, including Trump's own Republican Party. Senator Rand Paul was the most clear-eyed. And he said this in a post on X. The pursuit for peace should be that of the Israelis and the Palestinians. I thought we voted for America first. We have no business contemplating yet another occupation to doom our treasure and spill our soldiers' blood. Rand Paul, I salute you. Mike Lee, of the same bent, but what are we going to get from Curtis? Because Curtis is still dragging his feet on these three people that as I said in the first hour, if Patel and Kennedy and Gabbard don't get in you, I hold no hope for the Republic. Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky, and you've heard his comments before, he's definitely an America first. And that was Trump's campaign, America first. Now it looks like Gaza first or Israel first. But Massey said this, no thanks, referring to Trump's proposal. I'm not even sure Israel wants that. It's just a bad idea. It's a really bad idea. So Axios interviewed two other House Republicans, both of whom asked to be anonymous. One said, it seems pretty fantastical. The other said, I'm not sure how that works. This just doesn't seem like a workable solution. And then this lawmaker included not just Trump's comments on Gaza, but also Greenland and the Panama Canal. And he said, all these things seem a little bit at odds with the almost isolationist position Trump was taking during the campaign. And others were still more cautious. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina told a reporter this, there's probably a couple of kinks in that slinky. And then Lindsey Graham, we'll see what our Arab friends have to say about that. I think most South Carolinians would probably not be excited about sending Americans to take over Gaza. I think that might be problematic, but I'll keep an open mind. And you know very well why Graham said that, because of the massive number of service people who are in South Carolina. And then others were still somewhat skeptical from the standpoint that it would be a bad use of American resources. Josh Hawley, who is a Zionist, he said, I'd prefer that to be spent in the United States first, that kind of money. Senator John Kennedy said, in your natural lifetime or mine, you will not see me voting to take U.S. taxpayer money in rebuilding Gaza. And then there were of those, of course, who were soundly on the president's side, like Mike Thompson of the Speaker. He said it was a bold move, and that said if nothing were done in the Gaza Strip, it would leave open doors for terrorist organizations to eliminate Israel. Well, there might be a little truth to that because Hamas is there. Hamas is re-strengthening. They still have their underground tunnels, their storage areas, their underground missile silos, or not silos, but storage areas. They're reloading. And they're just waiting for the slightest little excuse to break the ceasefire. And now that the IDF has pulled out and Trump has promised support, can you see this chessboard moving around here? Can you see what might be happening even before spring? Because as Hamas is stronger than it was, it will be stronger than it was before, given another month. For the very reason that Putin will never agree to a ceasefire with the Ukrainian army that would allow the Ukrainian army to re-strengthen. Which is why I said any proposal that Kellogg brings to the Kremlin is dead on arrival. Anyway, back to what American congresspeople were saying about this plan. Rashida Tlaib, from who represents a very strong Palestinian area of Michigan. She says Palestinians aren't going anywhere. And then in Michigan, where many of the Arab Americans rallied to support Trump on the premise that he would deliver on promises to end the wars of the Biden administration, a group called Arab Americans for Trump, which played a big role in helping Trump get reelected by getting the swing vote of Michigan in his behalf, has changed its names. It has changed its name from Arab Americans for Trump to Arab Americans for Peace. They left out Trump. So the group's chairman said this. This is from AP. The talk about what the president wants to do with Gaza, obviously, we're completely opposed to the idea of the transfer of Palestinians from anywhere in historic Palestine. And so we did not want to be behind the curve in terms of pushing for peace, because that has been our objective from the very beginning. This is what makes every day unfolding now even more interesting than the previous. So Benjamin Netanyahu spent at least part of his visit at the Pentagon, where he met with Defense Secretary Hegseth. And the Pentagon readout said this: the Secretary emphasized the unbreakable bond that exists between the United States and Israel, and praised Israel as a model ally in the Middle East. We don't need Israel as an ally. Israel has no strategic value for the United States whatsoever, in my opinion. Nor does the Ukraine have any strategic value to the United States whatsoever. This is what George Washington warned about, and this is exactly what John Quincy Adams warned about when you go out trying to tackle monsters in other parts of the world and what it leads to. The Pentagon readout continues here. Secretary Hegseth stressed that the United States remains 100% committed to Israel's security. And they agreed just another, the over-the-radio sound is terrible. Sounds like you have a paper bag over the microphone and you are gargling while you speak. I'm sorry, I cannot control that. That's absolutely out of my hands. One time we do the show, and it sounds great, and another time it does not. And I have no control of the station. So if commercials are playing in the background while I'm talking or whatever else, I have no control. Anyway, let me go on here with what Hegseth said. Hegseth, this is quoted, this is from the readout. Hegseth and Netanyahu also agreed that regional integration is critical to the stability in the Middle East. Hegseth made clear that the United States, under President Trump's leadership, will stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel to pursue peace through strength. Another one of those little snappy sayings. Hegseth said the only way you get peace and enduring peace is by being very, very strong. I don't agree, Secretary Hegseth. The way you get peace and enduring peace is through the Treaty of Westphalia concepts, where you become partners. And you can become partners with a two-state solution by adopting the Oasis Plan and turning that entire desert, including the Sinai, into a garden. Through several smaller nuclear desalination plants, sucking water out of the Mediterranean. Don't worry, your port levels won't go down. Desalinizing that water and flooding the desert with fresh water in a two-state solution where you establish trade and economic cooperation between the two nation states. That's how you have enduring peace, where they, in the words of President Trump, will have beautiful homes. Instead of at the cost of all this violating basic concepts of human decency. All right, according to the New York Times, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says the U.S. and Russia have started contact over solving the Ukraine conflict. Peskov says there are indeed contacts between individual departments and they have intensified recently, but I cannot tell you any other details. So the Russian ambassador to London, Andrei Kalin, said in an interview with the British television channel ITV, there are very preliminary contacts with the Americans. We have not heard about any serious proposals on the table. We are prepared for a serious conversation on that side. And then the New York Times last week, almost a week ago, reminded the readers that President Trump said during his press conference with Netanyahu that his administration was already having, quote, very constructive talks on the Ukraine. We are talking to the Russians. We are talking to the Ukrainians. Something that did not happen, of course, under Biden. In fact, at the time of Blinken's retirement from Secretary of State, it had been more than 2 years before he had even had a word with Lavrov. All right, now Jordan. Trump's proposal to relocate as many as 2 million Palestinians to the neighboring countries, which primarily would be Egypt and Jordan, obviously has put Jordan in a very difficult position because King Abdullah II has been invited to the White House to meet with President Trump tomorrow, where he undoubtedly is going to get an earful of this hogwash, this crap, to accept more Palestinian refugees. Now, Abdullah expressed appreciation for the Saudi Arabia's firm and supportive position on the Palestinian issue during a phone call he had with Saudi Crown Prince and the Prime Minister bin Salman. According to the Saudi press, they have been talking about this behind the scenes. And during the call, these two leaders discussed regional developments and what are we going to do with the, how do you handle a problem like Maria? So the Jordanians themselves are in an uproar over the prospect of several million Palestinians being driven east across the Jordan River. The former Deputy Prime Minister Mahmoud al-Abadi told the Middle East Eye this: "In Jordan, we have numerous ways to confront this decision through political and popular actions, such as suspending the peace treaty and expelling U.S. military bases from Jordan." Now, Jordan, as I'm sure you are aware, is heavily dependent on U.S. foreign aid. But a Jordanian official who spoke to the Middle East Eye under anonymity said America aid is important and necessary for our budget, constituting 10% of the state's budget. But if it is linked to the issue of relocation, we will not hesitate to forego it. In other words, that 10% of our budget that comes from American U.S. aid, well, I don't know if it's U.S. aid or not. They don't really need to hide it, so it's probably not U.S. aid. It's only 10% of our budget. We don't care. We can let that go. We can get by without that in exchange for Palestinian refugees to come across the Jordan River. Now, the Senator Omar al-Yasra told the Middle East Eye, "Now the king will draw bright red lines during his upcoming visit to the White House, including rejecting any relocation as it constitutes political suicide for the Jordanian state." Well, the last thing Jordan wants is war. And obviously, Jordan would like a peaceful solution in all of this. But they're adamant that if the Jordanians have to close the border, if refugees come into their country, if the Israelis seek to force the border open after the Jordanians close it to stop this immigration, will be casus belli for war. Now, the Jordanians are under no illusion that they could win a war with Israel, and the United States, of course. But they believe that they would have no choice but to fight. So one source told the Middle East Eye that Trump's proposal for Jordan is an existential issue, both for Jordan and the Hashemite dynasty, pointing out that the country is the third poorest in terms of water in the world. Its 12 million people live largely in a strip of land along the Israeli border, close to the Jordan River. They said it's impossible to support an inflow of refugees. If you've looked at a map in that area recently, or you're familiar with it, Jordan is considerably bigger than Israel, but most of it is unarable ground, because there's no water. But the Oasis Plan could turn Jordan into a garden, just as it could the Sinai. All right, a couple of more things that I wanted to point out in this 40-minute discussion that was on Dialogue Works last week that I was talking about with Ray McGovern, Graham Fuller, Larry Wilkerson, providing this very interesting discussion of the general decline of the West and the crisis that's facing the human race right now. All three members are veterans of VIPS, as I said. And McGovern, who was wearing a keffiyeh, and he's always been a little controversial that way, began by stating that he had burst out crying when he met a Palestinian woman who was weeping over Trump's declaration that the U.S. would take over Gaza and expel the Palestinians. And he said he cried for my beloved country, a phrase borrowed from South Africa's Alan Paton. And he noted that former Secretary of State Blinken had tried to convince Egyptian President Fattah al-Sisi to take in the Palestinians while he was there, and was nearly thrown out of al-Sisi's office. We must stand up against this or be like the Germans in 1933 who caved into Hitler. This could happen in our own country, said McGovern. Then he was talking about Al-Sisi is talking about Hitler, and he put Trump in the same sentence. And he says these people, referring to Trump regarding the Palestinians and Hitler regarding the Jews, have no empathy or feeling for the people over whom they're reigning. He said the same thing is happening now. Trump wants to be stronger than Netanyahu, maybe even stronger than Sharon. Wilkerson said that the sight of Netanyahu, and you've seen this, I saw it, I'm sure you've seen it in the conference. They're both standing there at the two podiums. And Wilkerson said the sight of Netanyahu smirking next to Trump while Trump was praising the slaughter of thousands of innocents, sitting next to the person who had done it, he said was appropriate since it was the U.S. that had made it happen, expressing the disgusting state of the empire. He said the U.S. was going to go down in history as the worst of several empires, from the Mongols to the British. He said we've come a long way after 1945 to more sane world, but now it's pure unadulterated power, as could be seen in these press conferences. Graham Fuller said that the U.S. has some leverage over Egypt and Jordan and others, but it's purely a financial one. And if the U.S. cuts its aid to these countries or forces them to take in the displaced Palestinians, these governments will fall. And the Arab kingdoms don't like the volatility of the Palestinians, which upsets their emirs and their kings. So Wilkerson agreed, noting that, I'm quoting from the report, that Jordan already has 6 million Palestinians in their country who will revolt if King Abdullah gives in on this deal. Now, I hope I'm not beating a dead horse here. I just want you to understand the immediacy of this situation, because both Graham Fuller and Ray McGovern noted that they had grown up being taught that the founding of Israel, as I was taught as a child, the founding of Israel was a great victory for mankind, without being told that in order to create Israel, the Palestinians had to be kicked out in what is known as the first Nakba. So, do you remember the movie Exodus with Paul Newman? I first saw that as a teenager, because that's when it came out. I think I saw it with my parents. And then I've seen it on TV several times. And I just loved Paul Newman. I still think he's one of the greatest actors in the cool way that he acts. Reminds me a lot of the way Tom Cruise's persona is played up in movies. And I loved that movie. And I cheered for Israel. And I learned to play the piano early as a teenager, early teenage years. And this land is mine, God gave this land to me, the theme from Exodus, Leon Uris's book. I could play it on the piano. In fact, I learned it by heart. I couldn't play it now, but I could play it then. I just loved that music. And so in Leon Uris's story portrays the victory of the Jewish settlers as a great success, and there were parades in the Bronx celebrating the UN vote to create Israel. And so Graham Fuller, said that the Zionist hold over Western media made it difficult to break through to the population, even though Israel is now the Goliath. And although there's some hope that the youth are better able to see through this, because when you poll the Israeli citizens, the younger ones are very upset what has happened to the Palestinians. It's the older ones of the Leon Uris's Exodus genre that are in favor of it. So McGovern said, we need an Eleanor Roosevelt, reporting that FDR had really hesitated in taking the Jews into America who were fleeing the Hitler regime until Eleanor intervened and forced the acceptance of a shipload of refugees. And so McGovern in this discussion was saying, where is our Eleanor? He said, well, it's up to us. So Wilkerson described his view, which he has stated in the International Peace Conference meetings, that the geopolitics of the world is moving to Asia, drawn over there by China, which he says is unstoppable, and that the U.S. and Europe would be best to support it and become a part of it, like the BRICS or the ASEAN, the the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. That when Rubio in his Senate hearing, and remember he was approved, was it 98-0 as Secretary of State, was asked how he felt about the ASEAN. How do you feel about the organization ASEAN? He didn't know what they were talking about. He pled ignorance. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So in this discussion on the role of USAID, they all agreed it was best to shut it down. McGovern said that he and Fuller had trained for the CIA together when the concern then was the power of Russia, but that Obama and Biden had demonized Russia. And one of the results is, he says, the U.S. has become the godmother of the BRICS by becoming the enemy of all these other countries, driving them to unite in defense against American trade policies that's pushing them into the BRICS. He says the BRICS are mostly people of color, while NATO is mostly white. And he says it's absolutely ridiculous. I would add dangerous to divide the world by color. All right, do I have something else here in these notes that I want to bring to your attention? I don't think so. So the big thing that's happened since I did my last program, of course, is this conference between Trump and Netanyahu and the idea of relocating the Palestinians to other countries and then turning Gaza into a new Riviera. And in light of that, Trump's idea of promoting the Gaza as one of the greatest, most spectacular developments on earth, like another big real estate deal. And when he was asked who should live there, and this is crucial to the whole point of what I am talking about, and the idea is Trump crazy like a fox. He was asked who would live there. And he said, the people of the world. Obviously not meaning the people who are living there now, but people who are supposed to be the investors in this property, the guests, the super wealthy timeshare people, and the guests of the golf clubs and the casinos and the luxury resorts, and an animation of what that would look like was published and released by the Netanyahu office May of last year, where you could see an animation of this lush, developed Gaza Strip. I remember seeing that. And obviously, this has been immediately universally rejected by all the neighbors, all the surrounding area, all the countries, especially those where the Palestinians supposedly are to be relocated, as I said, Egypt and Jordan. But also Indonesia was mentioned, because I think Indonesia is the fourth most populated country on the planet with a lot of Palestinians in Indonesia. Well, they all rejected it. But all the neighbors, emphatically in rejecting this, so has the rest of the world. So have members of the Republican Party here in our country, as I was quoting earlier here this hour. And As I said, crazy like a fox, this isn't a joke, because it was immediately demonstrated by the Minister of Defense, Katz, who said, and I'm repeating what I said in the first hour, that he has instructed the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, to plan for the relocation of large numbers of Palestinians to leave Gaza and to prepare an exit at the land crossings by air and by sea. Now, what do you think Hamas is going to do in the midst of all of this? As I said earlier, go back down in their tunnels and hide? Hamas isn't going to sit still for this. And spokespeople for Hamas have already said, we know that the IDF is going to break the truce at any time. And we're prepared for that. Well, then why the truce in the first place? So that Netanyahu can get to Washington during a Trump-inspired ceasefire. Excuse me. You talk for 2 hours, you get a little dry. During a Trump-inspired ceasefire, for the press, for the coverage, for the hoopla. And then, of course, once he's back, and I'm sure Netanyahu's back in Israel. And I will repeat what I said earlier. As soon as Netanyahu got off the plane, he should have been shackled, put on another plane, and flown to The Hague for war crimes. But Katz, I mean, this has caused such a storm of outrage that all the spokespeople for Trump have been backtracking what he had to say. I mean, and it's hard to swallow any of this. And I'm still hoping somewhere in my left brain, somewhere in my heart, that Trump has a massive trump card up his sleeve. And I fall back on the idea of the art of the deal. And I fall back on ideas that he's setting Netanyahu up, because Netanyahu is one of the biggest obstacles to the two-state solution. And Trump, in many of his campaigns a year ago, to large crowds of tens of thousands of people, said the only way for peace is a two-state solution. And of course the crowds applauded and cheered that. So it's hard to swallow what even Levitt is saying. You know, you have to understand how evil it would be if these people were to continue to live in these dire situations. But they don't talk to these people who are singing and dancing in the streets on their way back to their smashed out houses. This is their land. This is their land for hundreds of generations. You don't just get up and leave. I've heard some of my friends, associates, who just who will make a why don't they just leave? You know, it's kind of like the people in Florida who get smashed to pieces every year in various parts of Florida and the Gulf states, all the way up to North Carolina, from the hurricanes. Why don't they just leave? Such arrogance. So, during all these discussions with Netanyahu and the walking back by Rubio and Levitt on some of these points, not to mention one word, who's responsible for this unbelievable destruction. I kept waiting. I just sitting there listening to these reports, just waiting for Trump to say something like, you know, we owe it to these people because we did it to them. Not a word. And who was immediately responsible for this unbelievable destruction? Well, the Israeli government, of course. But they lacked a lot of weapons. So they had to get their weapons primarily from two countries, from us and the guilt-laden Germans. However, this is just absolutely outrageous. I've only got a few minutes left here, and I want to make a point of this. Because of something that Secretary Waltz said, the new secretary, or the National Security Advisor. He said this: the fact is that nobody has a realistic solution, and he, meaning Trump, put some very fresh, bold, new ideas out on the table, and I don't think that should be criticized in any way. It's going to bring the entire region to come up with their own solutions if they don't like Mr. Trump's solutions. But one of the key points President Trump made last night was, tell me what real better alternatives they've been offered. See, now this is what makes me think that Trump has a Trump card. That he says these crazy just like the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. As soon as Mexico said, all right, we'll stop the flow of fentanyl into America and we'll send troops there to the border. Remember, these troops are owned by the cartels, so that's something else to be seen. And Canada said, yeah, okay, we get the point. And so he temporarily drops the tariffs. And I want to try and make this my concluding thing for the program, the broadcast this morning, is the idea that he makes these outrageous suggestions to get somebody's attention. Now, he ran on this "I don't want war" program to get elected. I believe that, even though some of his immediate actions don't seem to underscore that. And his ridiculous reports in his public statements regarding what's going on in the Ukraine. I believe he says the things he says because he's getting very, very bad intelligence, which again is why the intelligence community does not want Gabbard in there telling him the truth about the Ukraine. And he's getting very bad intelligence about the Palestinians, because the people who are feeding this stuff are the people who were feeding it to Biden, the underlings. And then you bring in new security people like Waltz, and Waltz makes that comment that I just said. The fact is, nobody has a realistic solution, and he, Trump, put some very bold, fresh, new ideas out there that shouldn't be criticized because it's going to bring the entire region to come up with their own solutions. Maybe that's what Trump is after. Trump's threatening, well, King Abdullah will be in Washington tomorrow, representing Jordan, of course. But Jordan has already countermanded, well, that money we get from the U.S. is only 10% of our budget. I don't know whether that's true or not. We can do without it, he said. But Trump knows that money talks. And if he tells Abdullah and he tells al-Sisi, no more money unless you take in the Palestinians, they don't want to give up that money. But it just might bring the whole region to sit down and, all right, can we come up with some better idea than what Trump is trying to do to us? You see how powerful the United States is in the midst of all of this, and what good the United States could do. So you see, on the one hand, with Doge and Musk, they're approaching $100 billion they've discovered in waste in just 2 weeks. And you cheer that on, and this is great, and all this money that was going to all these people who, if Patel gets into the FBI and Bond, who Patel will be working for, is actually going to carry through with their threats that we're going to find out who these people are and prosecute them, that have been undermining American ideals for gain. You cheer that on, and Trump is not stopping Musk. And look at all the people Musk wasn't elected. Look at all the people who are just spitting mad about Musk. are the people who have the most to hide, I think. People who, well, let me go on here. This UN conference that's scheduled now for June for the UN to get more involved with the Palestinian situation. And the full package, of course, is a two-state solution and a plan for economic development, not just for Palestine and not just for Gaza and Lebanon and the West Bank, but for the entire region. Because I looked at it the other day on Google Earth, and it looks like southwest Utah and eastern Nevada, all along the Utah-Nevada border. Brown on brown on brown, with a little bit of yellow in here and there, but not one spot of green in this region. And the only way you can do something about this is what the Emirates did, who transformed some of their coastal strip into green land. Not Greenland, green land. China has done an acceptable transformation themselves of a territory the size of Germany in the northeast areas of China that formerly were just totally desert by irrigation and redirecting the flow of certain rivers. And in doing so, building hydroelectric power dams. And the people who were dirt poor before, 20, 25 years ago, are now much better off enjoying a prosperous life. In fact, over the last 2 decades, 850 million Chinese have been brought out of abject poverty to a point where they can support themselves in that country, that communist country that now is becoming more and more open to enterprise and free exchange of goods. I've used my son as an example many times, who when he went to China to teach English was stopped constantly by the secret police looking for his papers until they became familiar with him. And he said the last 2 years that he was there, he didn't get stopped once. Not because they knew who he was. As he visited other areas of northeast China with his wife, then he married a Chinese girl, he never got stopped. But not just that, he said, you never saw their vehicles. You didn't see the police vehicles anymore. And his father-in-law was opening a business out on the curb in front of their house selling stuff that just a few years previous he'd have gone to prison for. Now, this is not a promotion for China, and I got more to talk about with that, but it'll have to wait till tomorrow because we're kind of out of time. But my goodness, this is one of our larger audiences here on the stream. Thank you. Thank you for being a part. I hope this is worthwhile. I am looking at, yes, yet another president sacrificing American soldiers for the Zionist state. That might happen. That might be coming. So I'm going to shut this down. I have no control of the K-Talk radio station network. So I don't know what's going to happen there or what's going to play. But I am going to go ahead and shut down. And I couldn't record the show at K-Talk today, but it's on stream. So I'm going to shut down my K-Talk connection. There, that's gone. And then for those of you who are on the stream, again, thank you so much for being a part of it. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll pick it up where I left off today because there's several more things I wanted to talk about. But my goodness, I appreciate this. And if you could share this and tell other people about the stream, the quicker we build the audience, the more power I'll have to get these ideas across. Power. Ooh, there's the word. That's what Stockwell's after. He's after power. Again, I appreciate your listenership. And there's comments. You know, you can comment, and I'll try to get to your comments during the program as I move more and more towards the stream. So I'm going to say goodbye. This is Jack Stockwell for Global Affairs Unfiltered. I'll see you tomorrow.